Okay, time for another one. 1.04, The Enemy Within. This is the first episode to do the evil clone shtick, or copy, or whatever. Variations exist in many shades. And also the first episode to have a transporter malfunction as the source of the problem. It's not even the first time they did that with an Evil Kirk. Or, okay, it's not the only time they did that with Evil Kirk. It's the first, but it's not the only time. Anyways, so the plot is actually rather simple in how things are set up. The plot hook is that they are doing a planetary site survey. Yeah. This is, don't you remember when we used to be explorers? This is what they were talking about when they said that. Kirk and his crew got sent to a planet to do a geological survey of the planet. And they ran into a problem. The said problem being that one of the people being beamed up to the ship got beamed up after he was attempting to collect a mineral deposit that was something that was unknown to Federation science, and that he was bringing a sample back to the ship so that he could analyze it on the ship. Okay, that sounds really good. Well, the sample causes the transporter to malfunction after he comes on board, which leads to the main plot. The main plot, of course, being Kirk getting split into a good Kirk and an evil Kirk, sort of. Not really good. More like, yeah, this is one of those things where it does this whole, like, chaos order thing, but also it's like niceness, meanness, where being too nice means you're this spineless simp who refuses to do anything. And if you're too much the other way, you basically try to force everyone to do things your way, whether they want to or not. It's one of those things, it's just like moderation versus lack of moderation kind of thing, It's like too much of either is bad. Anyway, so, most of the drama in the episode is centered on Evil Kirk messing things up, because he's not particularly subtle. He's trying to avoid having people realize that he's Evil Kirk and just airlock him or something, but as it turns out, the airlocking him is actually a terrible idea, because due to the nature of the transporter malfunction, both Kirks are slowly dying or something. Yeah. So that's why they have the he's dead Jim thing at the end, is because they have to figure out how to reintegrate them before they die. And in the case of the dog, it dies anyways because of the fact that it's a dog, apparently. Spock's guess as to why the dog died is because of the fact that the reintegration is a massive shock to the mind, and the dog's mind was just overloaded and unable to actually deal with it, I guess you could say. Anyway, that was the basic plot. Let's move on. So, characters that are guests. We have John Farrell, who is not in many episodes, but this isn't even the first one. He was actually in Mud's Women as well, and is also later in Miri doing bridge crew stuff. Is he doing the same sort of thing that Sulu or Chekhov would be doing in certain of the later episodes? Yeah, kind of. Then we have Fisher. Fisher is a interesting character because of the fact that it is part of the whole, like, we were explorers gimmick, where Fisher's job on the ship is a science officer who is a geology specialist. Now, geology specialists, or technicians as this calls it, are people who in TTRPG would actually be something that you would find to be highly useful, and I have actually played one in Star Trek Adventures. And it's one of those things, is like, you're the kind of science officer who beams down and figures out what the environment that you beam down into is like by, looking at it, scanning it, and making conclusions about what exactly it is when you are there in person. And, really good thing to have for your party if your adventure, anyway. So, what are the other interesting aspects of this thing? Because, like I said, the plot was kind of simplistic. Well, this episode has several things that get kind of sort of brought up as being like plot points that aren't explained. One is the fact that in this episode, Spock is actually referred to as the ship's second officer. Second. And that's an interesting thing because of the fact that in Spock's first appearance, he is in fact not the ship's first officer. The character that would be later referred to as Una Chin Riley was the first officer in the cage. Spock was a science officer in the cage. Here, Spock is referred to as the ship's second officer, and at no point in this episode does anyone in the cast get referred to as a first officer. Odd. But given that this is supposedly shortly after Kirk took command of the Enterprise, it's possible that Spock actually was a science officer on the ship and not actually the ship's first officer yet. Who, if anyone, was occupying the first officer position on the ship is unknown. Interesting tidbit. This is the sort of thing that you would probably not have reason to put into a story, but if you're dealing with an NPC ship and the NPC ship doesn't have a first officer, that might be something that you could use as a plot hook to give your players something to explore. Another thing is that this is the first episode with the Vulcan nerve pinch, McCoy saying he's dead, Jim, and stuff like that. Well, one of the things with the Vulcan nerve pinch, though, is that it is explicitly put in because of the fact that as part of their plan to reintegrate good Kirk and Evil Kirk, they have to knock Evil Kirk unconscious, and they do so with the Vulcan nerve pinch because they don't want to injure him. They want to knock him unconscious with minimal injury. And also they want it to be a situation where when he's reintegrated, both of them will be conscious during the reintegration, I guess. I don't know. Wait, actually, maybe the Evil Kirk wasn't conscious when they were reintegrated. Maybe that was what made it go differently than when the dog did it. I don't know. Okay, so why the transporter? That's actually another interesting aspect of this, is that the only method that they have available to them to get from the ship to the planet and back, and getting back from the planet to the ship, is important because of the fact that it's really freaking cold on this planet. And I'll get to that later. But they have to leave certain of the crew on the planet in a makeshift survival shelter because of the fact that the transporter is malfunctioning and they need to fix the transporter before they can recall them. So that actually added a very interesting element of suspense because, you have a ticking clock. You have to get things done before your crew on the planet die. Anyway, though, so why exactly this is not ever stated in the episode. There's several plot devices that you could potentially employ, like, dangerous storms or something. Actually, realistically, the environment wasn't actually that bad. Again, they didn't actually give it a reason for it in the episode, so yeah, you would basically have to make up one. And this is the sort of thing that players would ask about when they're doing it. It's like, oh, the transporter's broken. Okay, use a shuttle. Yes, not everyone is going to immediately jump at that. Several people are. And when you have 6 players and one of them jumps at that, suddenly the idea is out. Let's see here. Anything else that's interesting here? Nah, that looks good. All right, so the dog. Actually, the planet. So, the planet Alpha 177, this is a version of like sequential numbering. It's like this is basically a planet that has a number and doesn't have a name. In other episodes, they will have different names, and also there is another planet that is named Alpha 117. Not 177, but 117. So this isn't the only planet that is numbered using this naming scheme. It's not the name of the solar system. It's the name of the planet specifically, seemingly. No, that naming scheme is never explained in the TV show, and I don't even think any of the source books attempted to explain it, because usually in Star Trek, they have the solar system identified, and then A, B, C, whatever, as the planet in the solar system. Anyways, this is a planet that is actually extremely cold. It is considered to be a Class M planet. It's not a Class P planet. It's a Class M planet, although it's extremely cold for a Class M planet. Side note, 120 degrees below zero is just sci-fi nonsense for an environment that you expect people to live in. And no one died. Yeah, that's just stupid. Try not to do things that are that stupid. Now, one could argue that the 120 degrees below zero is actually not. It's like the lowest that their ship's scanners was able to find anywhere on the entire planet. So it's like this planet's version of Antarctica that gets to 120 degrees below zero, and you're not on Antarctica. You're somewhere near the poles where it's warmer. That would work, especially since, like I said before, it's like 120 degrees below zero is just dumb. Anyway. They're here to do a site survey. They find some interesting minerals. The site survey gets cut short when they have the transporter malfunction and a scramble to fix things. Interestingly, the episode does not actually say what happens after they have the issue with the transporter malfunction. Did they actually finish the site survey after that? Maybe. Episode doesn't say. The episode just ends and like, okay, well, that was interesting. Now to see what happens next time. I don't actually remember if this is one of those episodes where they showed the Enterprise leaving, or if it's just like Kirk talking to the camera and then like, okay, well, episode's over. Anyway, though, so how do we know that this is a planet that is actually capable of supporting life? Because these things are native to the planet. Notice how it's an extremely fluffy dog. Yeah. It is a species that is adapted to a cold environment. and is something that is a native life form and gets used as part of testing the transporter while trying to figure out what was wrong with it. Because, if they're going to do a test with a transporter that might kill you, why test it on a human when you can test it on a dog? And also is that the dog is apparently something that they don't consider to be a particularly valuable biological specimen. It's not like it's the only one of its kind or anything like that. Also, side note, when they were doing this, they actually did find two dogs that were similar enough that with a little bit of makeup, they looked visually indistinguishable from each other. That was interesting. Also, the breed of the Alpha 177 canine is actually determined by what they could find to use as live animals for the trained animal bit on the show. Anyway, though, the dog doesn't survive the reintegration process. Spock tries to guess why, but realistically, given that we only ever saw that reintegration process used twice, no one really knows, actually. Because of the fact this is something that was an alien life specimen that's an animal and not a person, having them pop up at random in later episodes is actually extremely common, as you can see with these 5 other examples. And yeah, that's about it. Oh yeah, more about the Vulcan neck pitch. Vulcan neck pitch is actually something that is used in several episodes, but not actually that common, I guess you could say. And also, one thing to remember about the Vulcan neck pinch is that it's not actually guaranteed to work on everyone. It's like, this is actually one of those things where I would actually roll for a success failure chance, because the fact that if the target notices that you are trying to do a Vulcan nerve pinch or neck pinch, uh, they might move and you might not actually hit the right spot. Because, like, Spock's explanation of how it works is that you have to precisely target a specific point on the body in order to make it work. And, well, also people wearing body armor, it won't work on them because the body armor is in the way. Also, non-humanoids, the logic behind why it works is related to overloading a humanoid nervous system temporarily, which doesn't actually cause significant injury. It just, it's unpleasant, as seen when it's used on Khan, and Khan actually doesn't get knocked unconscious by it because his augment physiology is able to shrug it off. He still hated it. Oh yeah, also androids. Yeah, just don't. No, because they don't have biology. You need biology for this to work. I would also expect that in the case of people like Borg, no, just don't. And anyways, that's enough for that for today. See you guys later.